Hello everyone. Today's book look is about cartoon animation by Preston Blair. Now you're like, but Smith, you draw superhero comics for a living. True, but in comic books, since it's all still pictures, it's helpful to try and get as much movement into your drawings as you can. And a great way is to look at animation. And if you look at an artist like Michael Golden, especially his G.I. Joe Special #2, there's so much movement in those still panels that you really feel like you're moving through an animated cartoon looking at that book. So I got this book probably 25, 30 years ago. It was right around the time I got out of the Kubert School. I had the thin one. They did one of those Walter Foster thin ones, but this is the one that shows everything that they broke this up into those thin volumes. And it does. It comes down to, look, you see a grouping of birds like this, drawn either cartoony or realistic, but you get a feeling of movement because they're not all drawn in the same pose, and that's part of it. So let's go through this. Walter Foster Publishing. This specific book came out in, let's see, 1994. So yeah, I got it right around 94. Preston Blair. This is going by the little intro right here. Preston Blair was a native Californian from Redlands. He attended Pomona College, then studied art at Otis Art Institute and illustration under Pruitt Carter. He's exhibited widely as a member of the California Watercolor Society and the American Watercolor Society. Preston was one of the fine artists of animation. With the Disney Studio, he designed and animated the Hippos and the Dance of Hours, the animated Mickey Mouse and Sorcerer's Apprentice, both in Fantasia, parts of Pinocchio, the segment in Bambi when the owls tells about love, and a Twitter-padded speech. He died at the age of 85 in 1995, so he had a good long life. I mean, this guy's work is phenomenal. You can obviously see the Disney influence here. Unfortunately, this book is too wide to fit in the whole thing. Nice introduction. This is one of the thinner books that I used to have that, maybe 35, 40 pages. The character acting he does is great. I love this page of cartoon construction because what this book does is it really breaks down things into really simple shapes. This is the average height for real people. We're only like 6 heads high. We're not the, 8 head high heroes, but you can see the basic mannequins and how you change the shapes for the bigger figures and just different shapes for different things, type of animals and such. Here, he's more block and cube. So you take this rabbit, like a Bugs Bunny, you can see he's broken it down into actual shapes, cylinders, modified rectangles, or modified blocks, I should say. Same with this figure here. There's always a nice line of motion going through these figures, the line of action, which is always talked about and important. I love doing these book looks because, honestly, I just pulled these off my shelf. I haven't looked at a lot of these books in years. I've had to draw animals throughout my career and stuff like this. Even drawing realistic animals, you can start the construction with these shapes. And it's just the fine details you put on to make it either cartoony or realistic. Terry Dotson has often said that his art is influenced, I believe he said this, by Disney animation in regards to like Cinderella and the more realistic animation, Sleeping Beauty and stuff like that. And you can see it in the way that he does fingers, the way he does clothing. It's very simplified. It's just the essence of the lines, not tons of detail and stuff. Here he's talking about circular and rounded forms, the skeleton of foundation. It's like Tom and Jerry looking, the attitude through these characters. So once again, even though I draw more realistic, what I call pseudo-realism, you still want, or I still want to apply these rules for drawing. I mean, this is great, just using this basic egg shape to draw the faces and stuff at different angles and such. I mean, this is basically Disney Foundation 101 for creating characters. It's funny, here you're thinking, is he doing a duck? No, he's doing a dog with a big snout. Great facial expression stuff here that you can apply to more realistic drawings. You would just tone it down some. I mean, obviously you're not going to see a dog do that in real life, but it's still cute. Stretch and squash is major in animation because there's the whole bouncing ball formula in animation, where if you're animating a ball bouncing, it's not just a circle that goes circle, 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 circle down, hits the ground, circle, circle. It squashes and stretches. So when the ball's on its up arc, it's more elliptical. And then when it hits the ground, it squashes and bounces back up. There might be an example of that in here. I haven't looked at this book. We might get to it. Here's a basic way to do hands. And the thing is, even though this is only 3 fingers, a lot of the reason Disney did that is because they would put these together. Because these fingers kind of move together anyhow. Different hand poses here. Go look at Terry Dotson's work, and you can see his hands, even though they have obviously 4 fingers, are kind of constructed this way. Oh, now he's just going to talk about cute characters and what design aspects you want to put in to draw cuter type characters. A cute kitten. Oh, look at my cute little kitty cat. Isn't that cute? Cute puppy. This is a really thick book too. This book is almost 200 pages. A goose. The rowdy rabbit. Suffering succotash. That rabbit Bugs Bunny coming after me, suckering succotash. That's my Daffy Duck. It's not that great. Little wolf hunter pig. You can never draw a pig with a gun today. Come on. Yes, you can. A cute bunny rabbit. Squirrels. I mean, squirrels are just the cutest. My daughter and I were driving the other day. Saw a little squirrel on the road. Nothing was behind me, so I was able to jam the brakes as not to hit the little squirrely and let it go. I would own a squirrel if I could domesticate it. More cute characters. The screwball character. And he's just kind of breaking down the key tags that make up these characters. These aren't hard and fast rules, but even so, if I was drawing a screwball type human, I could do things like a skinnier neck, bigger feet, the pear-shaped body. All this stuff could work for humans as well. And here he does it over here. You know, goofy character, like I said, bigger feet, pear-shaped body. The heavy, pugnacious character. This is what I love right here. Love that. You know, the beefy upper body, barrel chest, smaller legs and stuff really gives that sense of mass. And you can take this into drawing superheroes. More animal characters. And this is great stuff, just the copy. If you're learning to draw, wanting to draw this way, I haven't drawn cartoony like this in years. If I had to, I might take out paper and just sketch stuff like this to get used to doing it again before I were to dive into a job. It's the musical wolf. We've seen characters like this in cartoons. At least I remember seeing them growing up. And different aspects of the head. Just going through birds. This is great. I think he breaks down the wing. I mean, he kind of breaks it down here. You can kind of see the wing here when drawing a cartoony bird, obviously. With expression, you can see thumb, 4 fingers, thumb, 4 fingers. You know, where the elbow breaks. Puffing up his chest here. Great owl stuff. That's a more real, cover that up. That's kind of a more realistic looking chicken. But you got the big rooster right here. Yeah. Pop them eggs. Pop, pop. The belligerent bulldog. Bulldog sailor. Big puffy chest, of course. Make him look brutish. Why is this turned down? I don't know. Here he talks a little bit about foreshortening and perspective. Fold that back. That drives me crazy. I don't know why that got bent. Fold that back. There we go. Foreshortening and perspective. Here he goes into a little bit of it right here. And he talks about it. Here we have foreshortening perspective in single drawings and groups. Here is construction of a hand with 4 fingers, so a human hand, showing the construction. For some reason, he thought he'd go into gnomes, so if you're drawing your garden gnomes coming to life. Dwarfs. The 7 dwarfs. Of course, you have to have the Wicked Witch. Remember, he worked for Disney. This is great, drawing kids. You can apply these principles to kids in comic books, obviously. If you draw really cartoony, this works great. If you draw more like I do, pseudo-realism, you can still apply some of these traits, the hairstyles, the shape of the heads and such. Young heroine. And this really does, all it would take is the mouth I could keep. I could redraw these eyes and that nose for a little more realism, and it would work perfect in comics. But going back to Terry Dotson, if you look at Terry Dotson's work and you look at the amount of detail he puts into clothing, he doesn't get that much more detailed than this when it comes to the wrinkles and how he shows them. This is great for character movement and single drawings, as well as obviously animation. This is almost right out of How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. Oh, boring. Look, he's coming this way. They're both going away from each other. Much more power. Punch! And I try to remember this stuff when I draw punches and fight scenes and things like that. Get that nice line of action going in. You can almost take all these and put a real person over top of it. I could see this in my mind's eye as a figure that I would draw in a comic with, superhero type proportions if I was drawing a heroic figure with the shoulders like this and the legs and everything like that. So don't be turned off going, but I don't want to draw cartoony stuff like this. It all applies. Here he is breaking it down with the figure. Really exaggerated. He's talking about rhythm and design, going through the figures. Look, here is a heroic figure drawn by Preston Blair, and it does. You look at this and you're like, that seems kind of stiff, but it's not. You've got the head, You've got the head kind of angled up this way, so it's going in a different angle compared to his shoulders. You can see the flow, the head, upper body down through the leg with that line of action. And he explains everything nicely and simply for the student. This is great because everything was round and curvy, and you're like, oh, but I think more in terms of block shapes. Well, here you go. Block shapes. Horse, figure, golfing. This really does play into animation when people are actually doing the animating. The bouncing ball. Remember what I said with the bouncing ball. It wouldn't just be, you wouldn't just draw a perfect circle the whole way. As it comes down, it starts to stretch and stretch more. And then when it hits the ground, it gets really elliptical and then stretch, 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 back to perfect circle, stretch, stretch, stretch. And when you animate this and see it in a cartoon, you really get the feeling of the mass of that ball. And here he explains it with a frog or even a chubby dude jumping in a pool. It's not a very deep pool. You're not supposed to dive into pools that aren't deep. Movements of four-legged creatures. I wonder if Aaron Lopresti has this when he's drawing Wraith of God for the Horsies. Front movements of four-legged and humans. Shows the difference between a walk and a run. The sneak. I mean, this book is just so good. The skip with the cute little squirrel, squirrel girl. Whoa. The strut with a nice lady dancer here. I mean, just look at that. If you cover the head, you know, it's not, I can see some Terry Dotson in this work because Terry's work has nice flowing lines. And I have a feeling he studied stuff like this. Now he's talking about four-legged animals with construction and movement. So it's great how he breaks down into simple shapes the anatomy of these animals. Up to page 120. Like I said, this is a very thick book. This was it. If you're drawing birds, this is great to look at for birds in flight to see how the wings work. Now he really is. Now this is a smaller book, once again, thin, that they broke this book up into, talking specifically about animation, stretching basics, a shorthand art, squash and stretch, balance and tilt and movement. Balance, tilt, continued. Straight ahead rhythm and animation. He gets into timing. Timing is more animation in regards to what he's talking about with timing compared to timing and storytelling with comic books. Right here, this is more realistic drawn. This really gives me a Terry Dotson vibe. I could be totally wrong. I've talked to Terry before, but not really about this stuff. But this really gives me a Terry Dotson vibe and the flow that his female figures have, and even the amount of detail in like the hair and the body itself. This is great. Now he's talking about secondary action. This really does play into more animation, you know, for cartoons than, you know, drawing comics and stuff. Expressing attitude. This can obviously help you out in comic books. And when I think of drawing things cartoony, this is the style I see in my mind's eye, because this is the type of cartoons that I grew up with watching on TV, this style of cartoon. Just love this stuff. Ooh, look, it's an alligator doing ballet. Hippo and alligator. This is just showing movement and stuff through animation. This is great. Great section on women right here. I remember when I got this book, I was like, oh, this is cool, doing an oval for the hips, an ellipse. So I tried it, and it works great. And this really reminds me of Terry Dotson. Terry Dotson's work when it comes to figure construction, the nice flow and stuff. And you can see the oval type shape right there. I mean, this is just so, this page alone to me is worth the price of admission. Oh, and then right here, he's talking about balance. You see the shoulders and hips are in different positions. But then here, it's almost the same. But I love how this comes down. And this curve right here is basically showing how it hits a bone. But it's cartoonier, the hip bone, as it wraps around. This is very, reminds me a lot of Terry Dotson. I just love this work. Right here. And then he goes into the old movement of the female figure. Doing a dance, kick. He's talking about backgrounds, composition, staging, and drama. Here he's talking about the importance, and this does apply to comics big time, of silhouette. Well, first over here, this is the center of focus right here, this kid, and look at everybody pointing to him. And he shows it right here. First he does it with these silhouettes, but then you see the basic line of action all pointing to the center of focus. Here he's explaining the importance of silhouette. This is clear. In silhouette, you can see what's going on. Bad silhouette, because you can't tell what the hell's going on. So it's all about clarity and storytelling. Here he's talking about different facial expressions. I love this. Look at this. You know who these are? The Honeymooners. The Honeymooners. I'll knock you to the moon, Alice. Dialogues, different mouth expressions for different letter shapes. I mean, that goes way more into animation. This is getting into timing and such. Yeah, talking about timing and spacing. This is really for animation. Talking about making an animation cell. So, great. Let's see. Other books about animating. Disney Animation, The Illusion of Life by Frank Thomas. Cartoon animation. I believe I have that. Human Figure in Motion and Animals in Motion. This is a reprint of photographs of showing humans and animals in motion. So I can't 222 pages. I can't recommend this book enough. I think this is essential. So check it out. This has been Your Book Look by a 30-year veteran of the comic book industry, Andy Smith, for cartoon animation by the great Preston Blair. See you guys next time. Bat First Man 2 now, live on Indiegogo.